We are going to do a presentation this evening. I'm Becky Chanel, the superintendent at Caledonia Mumford, and this is Dr. Bruce Capron. He's our interim business official. And behind us this evening is Mr. Brennan Colwell. Brennan is our new school business official, so you're going to watch a transition happen here across the next month and a half as we transition. Could not say enough kind things about Dr. Capron and my support that I've had from him in terms of building this budget and making sure that we're not only ready for this evening, but that we've done a fantastic job of building a budget that's going to support the priorities, not just the folks inside the district, but in our full school community, and of course what our kids need from us. So the first thing I want to talk about is that our budget is certainly balanced. At the very beginning of a budget process, what we always begin with is asking all of our principals and the directors of all of our departments to really think about the things that they need in order to make sure that the buildings in each department is really running at full capacity. So for example, Mrs. Pete is going to submit information to district office, and she's going to ask for some things we're going to delete in the next slide. But we definitely always, in the very beginning, are trying to build a budget that doesn't have us hoping that we're going to be able to take care of things. So a good example of that is going to be a replacement plan. We have a fantastic replacement plan for our student Chromebooks, but we don't have a fantastic replacement plan when we start talking about teacher computers, and certainly not with our Promethean boards. So those are plans that we would like to build and fund at some point in a budget, but you'll see in the next slide that this budget does not do that. So how do we begin the process? We actually begin with all the asks, but in order to get to a balanced budget, you will see that some things had to be removed. So we did come out with a proposed budget of $21,660,678 in order to run our programs. So as I mentioned, we have to do some refinement to the budget. So in the very beginning, we're asking for more. We had about $550,000 in requests from both our building principals and our department heads that we were not able to fund. We had to get pretty creative with how we close out those gaps, and maybe not eliminating all the things that the principals and directors asked for, but maybe eliminating some other things that maybe aren't serving us quite as well as they used to. So the refinement to this particular budget, one of the requests that we had coming out of the middle high school is that we really do need another teacher, a full-time teacher whose full focus would be on STEM programming. We basically have reached what I will refer to as capacity. In order to really create a course for kids across the middle level and have them have these opportunities, you have to have a full-time teacher. If not, you would be giving only the kids available in a particular block that a teacher is available the opportunity to take the class and be a part of the program. So we are in a space, at least in this building, where we need to do some program development. Unfortunately, the budget this year did not sustain that in its original request. We are eliminating an academic intervention services position at the elementary school. So right now we deliver AIS with several adults at the elementary level. We do have someone that was leaving us for another opportunity, which gave us a good prime time for us to say, okay, if we do have to do some budget elimination, it's always great to do that in ways that don't actually cause you to let people go. So this gave us an opportunity to look at how we currently provide academic intervention services and begin to build a picture of what that could look like for us in the future. Maybe changing the way we're funding some things, taking care of some staff development to make sure that we're focused on primary first instruction. So this budget does hold some of that in, and I'll talk about that as we move on. We launched a strength and conditioning coach 2 years ago. It was a shared position with Leroy Central School, so our athletic departments were actually sharing that. The position was funded through BOCES, which meant that that particular job, the amount of money we were paying for it was eligible for aid. We've been unable to fill that position this year. So again, in places where we needed to right-size this budget, we tried to do so where there was not a name connected to it. You're going to watch us get pretty creative about how we put back together some form of strength and conditioning to maximize our weight room, give support to our coaches to make sure that our student athletes are getting what they need. Again, it's probably going to look more like the area of staff development, still shared with Leroy as part of the conversation that we're having now, so that we continue to generate aid on this particular investment. We did reduce some of our summer curriculum expenditures. So as a district, we've often opened up our summer curriculum work pretty broadly for what teachers wanted to focus on. This year, the teachers are going to see a really concrete focus coming out of our curriculum office, where we are going to try to hit some goals. And in order to do that, all of our funding is going to be streamlined. So we do anticipate not having as many expenditures this summer while we prioritize and stay super focused on literacy. We did maintain our technology budget, so as I mentioned, using Mrs. Pete as an example, we definitely do need to build in some sort of replacement plan for teacher laptops, for Promethean boards, and some of the technologies that we don't have replacement plans for. We kind of hope that we're going to get to the end of the school year in the budget and be able to use money that has not been spent to buy some of those things. That means that we don't have a healthy replacement plan. We shouldn't be hoping for that, but in order to right-size this budget, we've had no choice except to stay sort of flat. We have not been able to impact the amount of revenue that we're getting, right? So the revenue kind of then drives where our appropriations are going to be. So it's not that we don't value some of these things, it's that we're having to make sure that we stay right-sized within our revenue streams. Same with the facilities budget. Facilities does not have a good equipment budget. So again, each year they're fixing things and trying to kind of keep things alive in order to stay healthy as a department. We did not build in the replacement plan that they originally asked us for. We are getting ready to undergo a capital project. So as part of our capital project for 25-26, about 3/4 of our campus is actually going to be either paved or completely stripped down, milled, and redone. So we took some of the money that we had set aside for sealing our parking lots and said, okay, well that doesn't necessarily make sense this year. So we pulled it out. Next year it has to go right back in. But for this year, it did help us eliminate some of the gap that we were looking at. We were paying into a BOCES coaster for grant writing. That's also something we decided to eliminate this year. Should we decide to go out for grants, it'll be something that we do more at a local level. And also, the middle high school, we did ask for 2 lunch monitors. So right now at the middle high school, in order to run intervention, we do that through what is called home base at the middle and high. We have teachers that have to be assigned lunch duty. So if they're assigned lunch duty, they're not able to actually do intervention on the day of the week that they've been scheduled to lunch duty. So we were looking to kind of open up the flexibility for the types of academic intervention that are necessary at the middle high school. We have survived without it, although I would say gimping along, this budget we did not increase for this particular ask. What is in this budget? So this budget is exactly what this community has grown to expect from our school system. So when you think about what it means to come to Caledonia Mumford every day as a student or as a teacher, we have a we're heavily focused on the safety and security of our facility. So this budget does include things like protecting our investment, making sure that we're tending to the building itself. All of that has been budgeted for. Our grounds, all of that has been budgeted for. What you've been used to seeing, you will still continue to see. We do have supports built into this budget to increase some of our security. So we do have security cameras throughout the buildings, both inside and outside, and on all of our playing surfaces. There are a few blind spots on the outside of the school, and this particular safety plan is going to take care of some of those blind spots for us. We do have school resource officers in both buildings. That was an addition that we made to the budget last year. That particular safety and security initiative is being maintained inside this budget. We also each year buy a school bus, which you will see as a proposition as we get closer to the end here when we begin to talk about what our community is going to vote on. But for us to continue buying buses and making sure that our fleet is healthy, that allows us to maintain the safety of our students when we're transporting. This particular bus will be the first bus purchase for us that will have air conditioning in it. And you'll see that as a community, as the laws in the state of New York continue to change, we need to prepare ourselves for what that's going to look like. So this will be our first bus purchase with air conditioning. We're also going to talk a little bit about our capital outlay project. This particular budget is going to allow us to do some upgrades to our facilities through that capital outlay project. And I would say most importantly is the other side of this particular slide, which is we are going to continue to provide a high quality academic experience for our students. So this budget has no cuts to it in any of our programs. We offer 11 advanced placement courses, lots of classes that we offer at the high school for dual enrollment through GCC. Many of our students will graduate from Caledonia Mumford either going into college, already considered sophomores, or really, really close. So all of what this community has grown accustomed to, our athletics, all of our extracurriculars, making sure that all of our students find Caledonia Mumford to be their home away from home with something that captures their attention and makes them feel like they matter here is definitely inside this budget.
Yes, thank you. So we wanted to share a little bit about just the composition of the budget in terms of both revenue and appropriations. And starting with the revenue side, we wanted to just highlight that the majority of the revenue for the district comes, almost a little over 55% comes in the form of state aid from New York State. About 1/3 of the revenue comes from property taxes and is local revenue. And so we also want to highlight that we're using a little over $1.2 million in reserves and savings in this budget to support it. So it's a core part of, long-term planning and keeping the district, in a fiscally stable position. It's really important as well, the budget, as Becky highlighted, really describes that the majority of the budget goes to the program, the instructional programs that are so important to the district and its community. And so that represents about 72% of the total spending on the budget are for the people, the staff, the teachers, and programs that directly impact the students. I'd highlight again, the composition, a little more of how the money is spent. But one of the things I'd really like to highlight is when you see the total budget from a year-on-year change of being 5.1%, just wanted to share that a key part of that is because of the capital project, which the voters were approved and were able to do without actually impacting the tax levy, but because of additional aid and reserve use, we're able to take and include that in the budget, which is caused by the increase you see in debt service line, the second from the bottom. But what that means is if it wasn't for that, in terms of the actual operating budget, it's about a 3.9% year-on-year increase in the budget. I'd also just like to highlight the debt service amount that's in here. The district owns, the value of the total buildings is over $100 million. The size of the debt service payment represents a little bit about 1% of the total value of the buildings that are on the campus. Finally, just in terms of the tax levy, as we noted, the tax cap and this budget complies with the New York State tax cap, so the budget's able to pass with a simple majority, 50% simple majority of the voters. And I'd highlight that the 2.3% increase in the tax levy represents typically a 2.3% increase in tax bills, and for us, $150,000 home with Basic Star, the homeowner should see about a $38.49 increase in their tax bill over last year. Finally, there's more detailed information on the website, including the property tax report card that provides a little more information about the size of the budget, the levy, and some of the details, in terms of the composition of the district's finances.
This year, our capital outlay project is going to be focused in this building. Currently, you can see on the far side here what our system looks like right now. So you have these older pieces of heating equipment. We're going to turn these old pneumatic systems into digital and electronic ones. That's going to give us better control over the heat, allowing us to save money in terms of that. And for all the kids that played a winter sport, if you remember what the gym felt like on a few of those nights or Saturdays when we walked in, sometimes these controls actually were getting stuck open, and it was actually causing not just the loss of energy for us, but almost an inhumane environment for us to be able to function. So this capital outlay project is going to allow us to really set temperatures within the school and do a better job of taking care of them. This will give us probably about a quarter of our campus and being replaced. We still have 3/4 to go. So you should see this particular part of our capital outlay project either being something, again, next year in a capital outlay project or in a future capital project where we would come back through this building and finish up this particular investment. So what happens if we take this budget out to the community? We ask for a 2.3% increase on the levy and the budget goes down. Well, there's a couple of things that the board has that they can consider. So they can either take the exact same budget out to the community and ask them to vote on the exact same budget again, They can change the budget. They can actually begin to make changes to it, revise it, reduce things, eliminate some programs to try to get some more savings. If the budget happens to be defeated a second time, we actually would have to run on a contingent budget. Contingent budgets do mean that we cannot increase the tax levy, and we're basically going to have to operate off of last year's cost. It is impossible in a school to not increase levy and maintain programs. I could take you back, and I actually will. I want to go back to that very first slide that I showed you. Everything that you're going to see here in terms of our appropriations are driven by our revenues. So we know what our revenue is coming in. We finally have our state aid numbers. We're feeling a little bit more solid about that. We have some other revenue that we're able to estimate. So when we build out our forecast for what that revenue is going to be, we already know that our appropriations can't go past that. Should we have to go lower, should our budget not go up and we have to go lower, we would end up with a gap. The gap would mean that we would have to go back into the things that we've appropriated and start to eliminate some of those. So just making that clear to you folks that that budget is aligned to our revenue. We have been very lucky in this community to have a supportive school vote. So this is 10 years worth of records that basically show that the community very much supports the school. We hope to see that again this year. We continue to provide a quality education for every Raider, and we are excited to do so each day. When you come in to vote on the budget, you will be asked to vote on two propositions. That first proposition is for the overall budget that we need to expend for next year, that $21,660,678. The second proposition, we're going to ask you to give us permission to buy another school bus with air conditioning. And the final thing that you're going to see on your ballot is our board election. We do have two board seats that are up this year and two folks running for board election who you'll meet here shortly. We'd ask that you save the date and come out on May the 20th to vote for our budget. If you need more information, we actually have this click button on the front page of our school website. And if you were to click this, it's going to take you over to our budget page where you'll see every presentation that the Board of Education has seen. You'll see all the planning that has gone into building this budget as we have denoted it in step by step. What questions do you have for us? Go ahead.
What's the current balance of the reserves?
We have. The school district currently has built and has developed reserves up to about $7 million. But over the last, in this year, the reserves have come down. And as we said, we're looking at using another $1.2 million in reserves in the coming year. But we do want to highlight that reserves are critical to maintaining the support, stable finances of the school. It provides, lower costs to taxpayers by providing good cash flow, by providing better credit ratings, and has a number of advantages for the school district and the taxpayer community.
How much of that is beyond what is allowed?
None of it. It's up, the actual amount of reserves that the district can have is based on the law. Both the municipal and general education law allow the schools to set a variety of accounts for saving money in to be strategic. So the school district's allowed to have a 4% account, a savings account, that allows them to use that money really for almost anything. And then there's very specific reserves for certain risks, like or certain expenses, like paying pension funds, paying for the pension costs, or for paying for certain retirement benefits. So there's 6 or 7 reserves. We also have potential loss in liability or property, for example. But I would highlight that about a significant portion, right now about $2.5 million of that total balance, is actually approved by the voters in capital allowances. So, for example, the ability to do the current capital project for 2025 without impacting the local taxpayers' tax bill was really because there was some money saved in the capital savings account, capital reserve, that the voters approved to transfer over to the capital project. And likewise, there's still some money there but part of the target would be, can that, what level would need to be saved over the next few years for the next capital project to keep maintaining the facilities and buildings we have.
So if we have that much reserve, why are we funding more reserve? Can you repeat the questions, please?
Oh, sorry. The question, let's see if I can, tell me if I get this right. The question is, why are we funding more reserves if we have reserves? Well, really, one of the things that happens with the reserves is that it's not necessarily money. We're putting money we're using money in the budget. And so, for example, the appropriated fund balance and some of the reserves go into the budget and create some cushions. Go through the slides.
Mrs. Moose, will you open the reserve slides? I think it's best if you can see it.
I can show a little more.
Yeah, it's hard. They're hard enough to understand without a visual.
So we'll take a second and just give a little more background on reserves and then get to a slide that hopefully will show how, the money's not necessarily new money, but it's used over and over again.
It seems to be spinning. Okay.
There we go. So we just wanted to highlight again, reserves are savings accounts that the district can have, and it's actually, aside from the one unassigned, it's the Board of Education and the voters' local approval that determine, the Board of Education can set the level of some reserves, and then the voters set the level and amount of funding that can go into the capital reserves. So it's true that yes, between the end of during COVID, the district did pick up and increase its reserves from where it started at a little below about $2.5 million, $2.75 million, moved up to $7 million, and now has started moving down in 2024, and will change again in the current school year.
Let me borrow that mic for 1 second. I want to point out here that during COVID, we had basically 3 years in which you're going to see our ability to save a little bit more. So I want to draw your attention to things you might have heard in the news, like COVID money. So the federal government actually sent money to the states that sent money to the schools. So we got just over $2.5 million in stimulus money. And one of the things that we focused on very heavily as an administrative team and in support from the board was that we not take this federal stimulus money and hire teachers or hire social workers, folks that we would have to lay off in just a couple of years when that revenue actually stopped coming in. So what you see is that the district made some really strategic decisions to take the COVID resources that were coming from the federal government, put them into our reserves so that we have the ability to use them over time. So when you think about what a savings account does for you at home, reserves for me are the equivalent of us having a savings account. When you get a stimulus check, which I see in the governor's state budget that we're probably going to get a stimulus check of maybe $400 per family. You can imagine that if you're going to take your surplus and you're going to send it out to individual families, the check that they're going to get might buy a tire. Where for us, if we put stimulus money into reserves, you're actually going to watch these reserves begin to build and grow for the future of our community. So it was a very strategic decision to move that money in there. So stimulus money in, and the year in which we did not have school full time, and we were not running our sports teams, and we were not paying out for some of those things, we were smart about that. We took that money and instead of spending it on things that the community wouldn't be able to maintain in the long run, we put it in reserves. You're looking at a strategy that's allowing you to maintain stimulus money for the long term, and you're benefiting from it. Both in interest payments, which you'd see that we generated into some of our revenue when we're looking at where does our revenue come from, we are able to get revenue from the interest that is growing on the reserve. So just thinking about that stimulus money going really far for you, including that this is the largest capital project that we have ever done. So our capital projects have not been as large as this one. You're going to see for the first time some real significant infrastructure changes inside. We're going to remodel our libraries. We're going to update some of our STEM opportunities versus capital projects that were just roofs. That is thankful to stimulus money. So I just want to say that money is going to continue to grow the community. Are we using stimulus money the way that it was meant to be spent? We have contractors that we're employing right now. We're stimulating the economy even in this moment. So I just want to give you that $2.5 million in the stimulus is from, or in these reserves are actually coming from the federal government and being smartly used.
Yes. So, and in fact, on that theme, this really shows how the capital reserves were built and are now being spent. And this includes this includes the capital reserves that we just talked about, and the value of those and creating the capital projects to support the facilities. But we also wanted to highlight that, one of the things about that is if we want to take, and this becomes obviously a voter and a board decision, but if the district wants to save for the next capital project and assume out in 5 years that they want to do another project, there's still money that will need to be saved each year to build up to that if they want to offer a project that has no impact on taxes. So what's the other reserves? There's a whole series, you asked, of what I call operational reserves. These are various savings that can be used for specific things to support the district. And so they have moved up in the range of, from about about $2.75 million up to a little less than $4 million. So these are the ones that can actually, these reserves are important to the operation of the school. They're the kind of reserves that we cycle into the budget, and if all goes well, put back, and then recycle again. But if things go wrong, then the question is, then these reserves become important to continue operation of the school district. So what do? They help us manage uncertainty and risk. For example, if we had a change in state or federal funding, the new state budget has a clawback provision that if the state government doesn't get all the money they're expecting, for example, from the federal government, they may make a mid-year adjustment in our aid. That's part of what was put into the budget that passed just this month. The other part is if we have other things from damage or storm damage to unexpected boiler breakdown to roof leaks, wind damage, all these things that may require working capital and funds to repair. So the question is it's kind of why we need them and what do we have for reserves. So currently, again, a quick reminder that we're using a little over $1 million to support the operational part of the budget. We're able to contribute an additional $235,000 into the capital project for the capital reserves this year. So that's a big question is what's the smart level of reserve? It's interesting that even though the controller sometimes goes out and likes to make reports about the level of reserves, the controller, that same entity with New York State, says the following. If the school district, they rank school districts and towns and counties on how fiscally, whether they're in fiscal stress. And one of the core metrics for that is, basically the level of reserves. And if they have less than 10% of their budget in reserves, they start to get to the points of being in fiscal stress. And the other things they look at that are in many ways related to, and directly to reserves are what kind of liquidity we have. Are you running operating deficits? Which is exactly as Dr. Chanel said, if you get a one-time piece of money and you use it like the grants and then you use it for a recurring expense like staffing, you're going to have to structure a deficit because what do you do when that savings runs out? The other part is so low fund balance and the reliance on not having enough cash to get through the year, so if you have to borrow against next year's tax revenue, are all things that the controller says are bad and will mark the school down in fiscal stress if those things occur. And the cure for them really is the reserves. So to stay out of fiscal stress, ideally you need at least 10, the controller says you need about 10% of your money in reserves. However, the other part of this is because we're borrowing money by issuing bonds for the capital projects, a strong credit rating reduces the interest that the school district pays on that borrowed money. The result is if you look at the credit rating agencies like Moody's and Standard & Poor's, they highlight that to get the best credit rating, you need about 30% of your budget in reserves. So these are some of the metrics that help guide what is a reasonable level of reserves and why in the long run it can really save the taxpayers money through its credit rating and not having to borrow money to get through the year, things like that. So how do Calamount's reserves compare to other schools in the area? I just highlight. We looked at what the reserves are across a variety of schools, probably a couple dozen schools, both in the Genesee Valley BOCES and also in Monroe County. And if you look at it, almost all schools have the 4% unassigned reserve that we talked about. Most schools, the averages are typically running in those operational reserves, they're running about 20%, where Calamon is at 17%, and their capital reserves are running 15 to 17%, where we're at 11.5%. So just as a comparison to other school districts in the area, this is kind of where our reserves are sitting.
Yes, question to that?
What about the schools in Livingston County? Do they have a reserve of 5 to 7 million also?
So it depends, if we look at their, oops, sorry.
You showed Monroe County, Calmar, and Genesee.
Well, that was, Genesee Valley would be the surrounding, it includes many of the surrounding schools, both in Genesee County and Livingston County. We looked at Mohawk, it includes all the neighboring schools around here, and then sample some of the others in that area. So I think it's pretty representative of pretty much any school you can drive to within the next, within a 40-mile radius. Does that answer your question?
We can take other questions.
Yeah, are there other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you speak a bit about the audit that was done last year?
The comptroller's report?
Yeah.
What, do you have like a specific question? Like,
Where's the money?
oh,
Yes.
it's in the reserves.
It was
That's it.
not, wasn't a favorable report for Caledonia. And I never anybody heard where they saw that as a problem and where is the money that they were concerned about.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
So where is the money?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm gonna repeat, I'll try to repeat the question and you tell me if I did catch it from down here. So you're saying that you feel like we did not get a favorable report from the comptroller. And in terms of that, where is the money?
Yeah, what were they concerned about?
What were they concerned about?
They graded us as unfavorably according to their.
So basically what the comptroller's report did is they gave us some feedback on things that we could do better. So we had to create a corrective action plan. Our corrective action plan is actually, I'm going to summarize it by saying that the most important thing that we need to do moving forward is to create ways to be far more transparent with our community. So what we are thinking about moving forward is making sure that we host more workshops with the Board of Education to talk about reserves and invite the community in. In terms of our reserves themselves, I feel like with our corrective action, there isn't anything where we have to close down our reserves. Like, our reserves are in healthy limits. The same comptroller gave us a really great score when it comes to fiscal stress. Like, we are not under fiscal stress. We have a very high credit rating, so it would be the equivalent of you looking at like your FICO score. We're definitely all the way in a great spot for being able to borrow. So in terms of what we have to do to make change, I would say we need to be a little bit more transparent. So they commented on a couple of things: transparency around the reserve, just making sure that we're having a few more conversations. We do have things out on our website, but that isn't necessarily enough for transparency, so we're going to be focused on that in the future. We're going to actually do our first workshop. You'll see it posted here shortly. We're going to be talking about the reserves in early June in workshop setting, and inviting you guys in if you want to actually watch the work that goes into building reserves and making some decisions around them. The other thing the comptroller talked to us about was really having some invoices. Let's say that we ordered some things at the end of the school year. So like right now, we're in the process of doing year-end spending. We had some year-end spending that didn't come to fruition until the next school year. They don't necessarily love that. They like to see that when we open up a purchase order, that we buy something and we close it out in the same fiscal year versus having it carry over. So that's actually one of our corrective action steps. We have to work on getting a little bit more clarity around that and get our invoices closed out sooner. So when I think about the comptroller's report, that's how I would summarize it for you. It's not necessarily that we had too much money. There are no laws around how much we can have. There really just is laws in how we function with our budget to make sure that we're being transparent and, again, closing out those purchase orders and making sure that we're staying year to year within inside the budget that the voters have approved. Does that answer your question? I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. So like in general, I've definitely read some things on Facebook. I won't respond to things on Facebook that are inaccurate, but some of what I've read is along the lines of there's money missing. There's no money missing. The comptroller did not say that in our report. What else have I seen that I thought, oh my goodness, I wonder where that came from.
Well, there's a Livingston County news article that's pretty sneaky.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I also read the article from the Livingston County News. So I will say, like, obviously I wasn't superintendent in that moment. Superintendent Malasani was still here. He did reply to the newspaper, trying to get them to cover the portion of the story that the school district feels would be better representation of who we are and what our budgeting practices have been. I can tell you that that doesn't sell papers. And so, you know, some of our responses to some of those questions were not in there. Yes.
I have a question about the potential contingency plan. I'm reading this.
Bruce, can you hear him? I just want to make sure we.
Sure. I'm reading this document here, the catalog, just a question of this. Looks to me like the contingency budget would be $21,446 compared to the $21,660. $400,000. What does that mean in three things? One would be any thought to give what programs or service work we've got? And how much would that impact that $38 and change for the home?
Yeah, when it's,
I can take it. Yeah, I think just in general, if we had to move to the contingent budget. So when we talk about an increase in the tax levy of 2.3%, so as soon as you said that, I instantly was looking at Bruce. What, $181,000 is how much money we're asking the community in terms of increases in our school budget. So that's the revenue that we're asking for. So you're about right in terms of what would we have to go down. So in terms of how I would describe that to you, yes, we would have to start cutting into programs. Where districts begin to make those decisions, our board actually has a set of guidelines that help us make those decisions. So we would begin by looking at programs and expenditures as far away from kids as possible. That's where I would say to you, you would probably start to see the grounds not being as well taken care of. You would watch some of the facilities not be cared for the way that we've been caring. We would begin to peel off away from kids as best as possible. I would say one thing for this community to take note is that we really don't have room to cut. If we have to start cutting teachers in order to make up a deficit, please know that that means we would start cutting programs. Right? When we've had retirements, the district has been very frugal at really looking at, can we continue to maintain the same level of quality of education without replacing this person? So in some districts right now, you're watching them actually lay off teachers. If we started to lay off teachers, you're going to feel it. It would come with increased class sizes, cuts in our curriculum guides for what we're able to offer at the middle and high school. That's how we would have to do it. It would be things not mandatory for graduation. Not mandatory. Kindergarten is not mandatory. Like that would not be, I wouldn't recommend that, right? That wouldn't be good for our community as a whole. I would think you'd probably start cutting some of your more top tier things if that's what you needed to do, like maybe not offering AP classes, downsizing your course side.
About the $38, I see that it's a very small difference between the budget we're going now and the
Yes.
so it's $38 for
yeah, I mean, that's why, you know, as you can see, the real profit, the total levy represents less than a third of the district's total revenue. And, you know, so, but that $181,000 is important. I mean, it supports a couple of 3 staff members. So we really want to make sure it's there. But on the other hand, we're hoping that that kind of number, when people look at it relative to their own homes and their own budgets, find that it provides a lot of value in terms of the programs and the school district, and it is worth supporting this budget.
So if we ran contingent budget, like the $38 that you're pointing to, if we went down to a 0% tax increase, you would save $38 for each 150,000 of your home's value.
But I mean, in addition, in the contingent budget, through some other cuts, for example, we wouldn't be able to buy equipment, we wouldn't be able to resupply certain things. There's a few other restrictions in the way a contingent budget happens. So it would be more than just a tax levy. It will cut even deeper than that. Other questions?
Aside from that, graduating classes now.
Our graduating classes are between about, I would say 55 on the low end, and then we have a class coming through that's right around 72, 73. So when you hit the 70s, we have a handful of those, but I would say we're hovering between the 55 and 60 mark.
And what about lower elementary?
Right about there. Right about there. We're running, we think about it in terms of sections, right? So all of our grade levels are really divided up into 3 sections, which allows us to stay with 3 teachers at each grade level.
What's the total amount of students right now?
Total amount, we're right around, I'm going to say 820. We hover a little bit lower than that and sometimes up to 820, kind of depending. Enrollment varies across the school year. Great question. I mean, that is important to us too, right? So when you realize that 3/4 of the way that we fund our schools is actually from state aid is actually driven by enrollment. So the more kids we have, the more state aid we get, right? Enrollment is very important to us too. We would love to see an increase in enrollment. What are the other options, right? So the other options, and we'll just talk about that. The other options are that if we're feeling like our enrollment is not enough to support our school programs, there are a few things that the state allows us to do. We could begin to look at merging with another district. The state allows that. The state allows school districts, instead of merging, to actually be annexed. Right? So there's a few things, and I think those are larger community conversations that, if that's the direction that the community is interested in, I would say continue to talk to your board members about that being something that you're interested in. In this particular budget, though, we built with the understanding that our community values a community school, wants their children to attend school in the community in which they live, and to have the opportunities that have been afforded to them stay. And so this budget does do that. Any other questions? I would just say your questions can be endless. If you're feeling like you have more questions, you'd like to dig more deeply into numbers, you don't want to do that in front of a group, I would just invite you to come in and see myself and Mr. Capron, Dr. Capron, at any time. We'd be glad to sit with you, answer any questions, open books up, show you what it looks like. In the spirit of full transparency, we'll answer any question that you have. So don't hesitate. Call the district office. You can either talk to Mrs. Goose and get on our calendars, or you can send an email to myself or Dr. Capron, and we will make all the time that you need in order to make the most informed decision in hopes that you come out and support this budget. Thank you, everybody. The next portion of this is going to be our Meet the Candidates night, so if we could get our 2 board members to come down front and take the hot seat.
Nice to have you here.
No, sir.
Where would you like us to sit?
I think if you sit right in the middle, that would be great. I am going to, are these mics going to pick them up too, or they need this mic?
They couldn't hear anything during the meeting in the audience.
Okay, yeah, that's the worst part about this, this particular setup here. So I think what we'll do is I'm going to introduce Mr. Colwell again, so he's actually going to lead this conversation. So I guess I'll give you the microphone so you can get started, but then you're going to have to hand it off to our friends here so they can introduce themselves. Are you ready, sir?
I'm ready.
Welcome to come home.
Thank you. And I've never needed a microphone, so I'm going to give it right
Well,
to that.
you're going to need it. They can't get it back.
Can't hear me in the back? No? Oh, all right, I'll use it. My name is Brendan Caldwell. If you haven't heard enough tonight, I am the new school business official. Very happy to be here at Caledonia Mumford. Grew up right down the street in Lincoln Child, right on North Road. Grew up playing soccer over here, and a bunch of family here as well. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm going to facilitate the Meet the Candidates tonight with Ms. Dietrich and Mr. Rich Licky. Got a couple questions that our students from Participation in Government have drafted for us. I'm going to read all those to each candidate tonight. And you guys ready?
So
Ready. You're pretty excited about it, right? All right, let's get going. You're going to go first then. All right. Ms. Dietrich, what things would you prioritize to make our schools even better?
All right. Making our school better doesn't mean spending money necessarily. Certainly, we need to invest in stuff, but it's not up to me, it's not up to Arnie, it's not up to any of the individual board members. We all have to work together to prioritize. Say, use our resources wisely. We have so many experts at so many things here. Use them. Like our E&L program, how it's enabled our diverse student population to succeed academically. Our CTE classes give kids something new to learn, and as well as giving them, skills for their future selves, more than what they're going to get in the classroom. I'd also like to continue to focus on communication. The last 2 years, we've improved home and school communication dramatically, with Student Square, Parent Square, Student Square, better social media presence, and working as a board member on committees. We've worked together, bringing community feedback to the district to help improve, say, Parent Square, to help improve, what do parents actually need to hear? So communication is so important. And I would add to that, we need to focus, to make the school better, is to find ways for all students to succeed. Every student needs an opportunity. They might find that success in the classroom, they might find it on the stage, they might find it in a music room, others find it playing sports. So using these resources that we have a lot of, let's find an opportunity for every student to find a place where they belong and where they can succeed and be proud of themselves.
Thank you. Mr. Richley, would you like me to read the question again, or?
No.
Good, all right.
I remembered it. Just simply preparation of students through high-quality education and experience. And secondly, like Liz said, clear communication between the Board of Education, staff, students, and the community.
All right, Arnie, we're going to stay with you for this next round. The next question is, what inspired you to run for school board?
Well, I wanted to get another plaque. And I wanted to see my name twice in the musical program. Besides that, many years ago I had, actually 3 of my kids were in each of the schools, elementary, middle, and high. And I thought that was kind of cool. And I wanted to be part of the decision-making process that affected them and their buddies. And also, basically my concern and care for the youth.
Thank you.
Like Arnie, a lot of the reasons I chose to get involved was because of my children. I've got 4 kids there. When I started on the school board, I had 1 in every building, and it sets an example for them. If they see you involved, they want to be involved. And things that you do on a small scale here affect change long term. And if you want things to change, you need to be involved. So I stepped out of my comfort zone and said, why not? So here we are.
Thank you both very much for those answers. Great answers. Let's stick with you, Liz. I'm going to go to the next question. How long have you lived in the community, and what other ways are you involved in the community?
Sure. My husband and I moved here in 2003, and all 4 of our kids have gone to school here. 1 graduated 2 years ago, another graduates this year. And though I am not involved in the community as deeply as they are, in a sense, that they're involved in all the school clubs, ukulele club, band, chorus, middle school play, high school play, senior play, you name it, they're involved. And because of that, you get a different perspective, and it brings a really unique perspective when you're watching your kids do these things and get involved.
Thank you.
I've been here almost 65 years, on the better side of North Street. But, what am I involved in besides the 18 years on the school board? I help out the fire department. I'm an honorary guy, so I do the man in the red suit. I won't say who that is. I did 5 parades, ran those for them. Anything I could, because they're awesome. Like her son and my son, they're both firemen. They're awesome volunteers. So that's basically what I've done for the community. Also, I try to do a lot of music, as everybody knows. Memorial Day, Halloween parade by the PTO, et cetera. I'll keep
We're going to stick with you, Arnie,
Larry.
for the next one. Thank you for that answer. Thank you, Liz, as well. What should be the budget priorities for our schools?
The best education for the students with the least burden to the taxpayers.
And like I said before, encouraging success for all students. That needs to be the number one priority in our budget to fuel student growth in school and once they're out of school. We need to and we do provide opportunities to help every student find a place where they belong and help them do well with their lives.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, the next question is, what will you do to ensure the safety of our students?
That's a hard one to answer as an individual because it's not me, I'm not the one responsible for it. But on the board, we work together. We work with administration, we work with the community, we work with faculty, staff to create a safe and welcoming space. It might look like safety that's established through an environment of trust. It may look like something physical, upgraded security, better doors, better windows, better locks. It could look like encouraging students and staff and community members to speak up. If something doesn't feel right, say something. That at its core keeps everybody in the school safer. And it can look like noticing when there's a problem with a door or a window or parking lot light. Those in the end are also student and faculty safety.
That's a great answer.
I would definitely always support the SROs and all the technology, like Liz says, to attain the highest of safety standards for the students and staff here.
Thank you, Arnie. And our final question, some really good questions, guys, thank you. What qualities and skills do you think you would add to the school board? What makes you unique?
Skills would just be things I've learned in the last 18 years with these folks. And uniqueness I had a lot of hats in the community as far as, so I was a student, obviously. I was a single homeowner without kids, having to pay taxes. But then I got kids, and a wife, of course. So I paid taxes with that. And then I had retired parents on a fixed income that had to pay taxes. So I understand all of that, making me in kind of a unique position as far as what I can see to be on the board.
I hope that I bring a sense of logic, of analysis, of having been involved. This will be the end of the third year. Just learning from every day-to-day interaction with the board. And on a board, I hope that I bring some sense of organization and willingness to get stuff done, whether it's committee meetings or senior banquets or teacher appreciation or whatever things need to get done.
Well, that is all we have for tonight. Thank you both very much. Those are some great answers. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
As I said earlier, we appreciate you guys coming out this evening. If there are questions that you had that you didn't want to ask in front of anybody, Dr. Schubert and I will hang back and we'll answer any questions that you have. Otherwise, we promise to do that. And thank you for your support.